Coming up, 75 feet, 300 knots. Fly along at the Reno Air Races. We've got a look at the changes to the race since last year's crash. Plus, find out how you could get your tailwheel sign-off at AOPA Aviation Summit in sunny Palm Springs. AOPA Live this week begins right now. One year after a crash killed a pilot and spectators, the Reno Air Races went on without a hitch, but with many changes. Thanks for choosing AOPA Live this week. I'm Tom Haynes. Safety was key as the airplanes raced around the Nevada desert. AOPA photographer Chris Rose has the story.
I am so thrilled to be back. I think a lot of us thought that it might not happen, and actually it was really quite up in the air for a long time.
Like coming home. This is the September home for a lot of people from around the world, and I'm happy to be one of them that does.
Well, last year was a mega tragedy.
I would never ever like to see anything like that happen again. So anything that we could do to make it safer for both the pilots and the spectators is, I think, a good thing.
What is different this year compared to last year?
They've put a few more safety. They've implemented a few more safety items onto the course, onto the ramp.
It is a little tighter course. It used to be 8.5 miles around. It's now, I think the number is 8.1.
And they have some new requirements for us. The technical inspection was a little bit more thorough than it has been.
Much more attention to looseness in trim tabs, for example, any sort of looseness in the bolts that go into it. So there's been increased scrutiny over the airplanes.
The ramp has to be sterile for any of the jets or any of the unlimited racers. Different positioning, little logistics on the ramp, like crews and fuel trucks and things like that.
We had to do some G-tolerance training around the course before we could fly.
Because our job's still to be entertaining and educational, make the easy look hard, the hard look impossible, and if a bad situation, if something bad happens, we don't allow it to go any worse than it could. So again, our job is to be entertaining, educational in good times, and informative and safety-oriented and bad.
AOPA Live got exclusive access to one of the airplanes in the race. We'll fly along at close to 300 knots, just a few feet off the ground in just a few minutes. Stick around for that. Well, it was the last thing they did before skedaddling out of town in this wee small hours Saturday morning. But the U.S. Senate did pass the stopgap funding bill to keep the FAA and other government agencies running past the weekend, kicking the can down the road another 6 months rather than passing a real budget. But the real problems begin in just 3 months. That's because of something called the SEQUESTER, mandatory automatic cuts in the federal budget beginning in January.
Supposed targets of the amounts of money they're talking about in sequestration are very large. So there's no escaping the cuts. So the impact will be across the board, whether it be in terms of job losses to government employees.
FAA employees could be furloughed because the agency would have to cut even its air traffic control budget by more than 8%. The SEQUESTER is a law Congress passed to try to force itself to act on a new budget, but it hasn't worked. Why? We asked Norma Netta, who served 20 years in Congress.
I used to think of politics as the ability to get something done. I think of politics today of making sure that nothing gets done. And so there's total legislative gridlock. I guess in the definition of some people, compromise is if you agree with me, not if we give up a little to get to the middle ground.
Well, Congress has gone home until after the elections. If you don't like this state of affairs, now's the time to talk to your senators and representatives or the candidates vying to replace them and tell them just how important stable funding for the FAA really is for the nation's economy.
When you're out and you hear your politicians talking, if you write them letters, if you are going to town halls where they are, let them know that you're concerned about sequestration and make sure they're concerned as well.
We'll continue to follow the story and what it means to pilots. Well, coming up after the break, find out how you could get your tailwheel endorsement at AOPA Aviation Summit in Palm Springs. And later, we'll fly along at Reno. You're watching AOPA Live this week.
From your first skyward glance, the dream of flight compelled you. And from your first glimpse of a CIRRUS, you realized that dream had a name. CIRRUS Aircraft. Go where you've never been before.
Welcome back to AOPA Live this week. The AOPA Board of Trustees has a new member. Amanda Farnsworth of Nashville, Tennessee is an instrument-rated private pilot. She's been a member of AOPA since 2003. She recently retired from a 27-year career at an investment broker where she remains partner. Well, are you ready for AOPA Aviation Summit? We're just 2 weeks away, if you can believe it. AOPA Live's Paul Harrop tells you what to do if you're flying in and how you can get your tailwheel endorsement once you're there.
The days are winding down until the skies, streets, and sidewalks at Palm Springs will fill up with airplanes. But they have to get there and land first, and if you're flying in, you can pretty much pick your airport.
Some great options at Summit this year. We've got, of course, Palm Springs International Airport, PSP, and Jacqueline Cochran Airport, TRM. Both are host airports. Either one are fully serviced by AOPA infrastructure.
AOPA will be there to provide transportation to and from the convention center, and the FBOs couldn't be more thrilled to have you.
We're very excited this year to be part of the AOPA Summit. We're really delighted to be one of the host FBOs, both here and at our thermal location.
But once you're on the ground, that doesn't mean the flying has to stop. We're offering rides in Warbirds, glass cockpit familiarization, and
we're going to be offering tailwheel experience familiarization flights that could possibly result in a taildragger endorsement for the individual pilots.
All that plus great programming daily and a whole lot of fun in the Coachella Valley sun. You can make your plans right now at aopa.org/summit, but hurry, early registration closes October 1st. We hope to see you there. In Palm Springs, Paul Harrop, AOPA Live.
There's a special track at AOPA Aviation Summit for our Teen Aviators members. It starts in the morning of Saturday, October 13th with a jam session with the flying musicians, then education roundtables, followed by a meet and greet with the Flying Wild Alaska pilots. In the afternoon, you can join Dave Couillet for a talk about flying. Program Director Lauren Otto says teens won't want to miss it.
So it's going to be great fun, lots of educational activities, and lots of fun too.
Best of all, Aviators members get into Summit for free. Aviators is the youth membership targeted at teenagers. The group has just hit a milestone of 1,100 members. You can learn more and sign up right now at aopa.org/AV, the number 8RS. And don't forget, there's a new app for you to use at Summit. You can download that from the iTunes Store or from the Android Store. And one thing you might need in sunny Palm Springs is a pair of sunglasses. AOPA flight training editor Ian Twombly has a look at several pairs aimed at aviators.
Adding to the list of things you can never have too much of, let's say runway, altitude, and fuel, are sunglasses. Everybody knows that pilots love sunglasses. We buy tons of them, all different kinds. And because of that, you'll find kind of wacky things in the market. There's two new kinds here. One is called Flying Eyes. This is something you've never seen. Flying Eyes has what looks like standard sunglasses in the front and then a strap on the side. And the point is that it feels comfortable behind a headset. So you do the thing here, put these on, tighten up the strap, got my little ponytail going, and they are really comfortable behind a headset. You got to give them that. But of course, you don't want to walk around like this after you get the crew car and go to lunch, so they do include stems. It just takes a pen or something like that. You pop out the strap, put in the stems. They look like regular glasses. Now, the lenses are fine. The glasses fit just fine. The problem is they want $200 for these. There is a special introductory price of $179 if you jump on it. But I don't know, for the money, I'd rather have these. These are Shadens, big name brand in aviation. These are Mustangs. They've been out for a few months now. A little more pricey, $309 for the regular version, $349 for polarized, and of course we know pilots polarized everything else. But these are fantastic sunglasses. They're light, frames are made of titanium, and you can see they're very thin, so they too fit under a headset beautifully.
Seems like we never have enough sunglasses. When we come back, big changes to the medical application, and we'll fly with an air racer at Reno. You're watching AOPA Live this week.
Flight following didn't call out an opposing plane I saw it on the screen. He turned right and the other plane just pretty much flew right on by. It's your life. You only get one shot at this.
Welcome back to AOPA Live this week. I'm at Tom Haynes 29. If you're using Twitter like I am, we've made it easy for you to follow all the AOPA staff. You head to twitter.com/AOPA and click on the Lists tab. Once you click subscribe, you will automatically see all of our staff's tweets. Tweet us anytime. We'll be looking for that. Well, pilots, listen up. There's a big change coming to medical certification in the next week. Starting October 1st, the only way to apply for a medical certificate will be the online MedExpress. The paper forms no longer accepted. AOPA Director of Medical Certification, Gary Crump, says the change will help streamline the process.
For the AME, it's going to save a lot of staff time because he or his office staff will no longer have to input that information off the hard copy form, enter it into the computer, and then transmit it to the FAA. So there are a lot of back-end pieces of this that are going to make the system work more efficiently over time.
You can learn more about the process at AOPA.org. Well, there are many things in aviation that can be debated, and AOPA pilot editors got together to debate pattern entries. Here's a look.
High wing versus low wing. Should you train at a non-towered airport or an airport with a control tower? Lean of peak versus rich of peak. These are some of the questions that pilots love to debate endlessly. And then there's this one. How should you enter the pattern at a non-towered airport?
Traffic pattern entry doesn't have to be all that complicated. It gets that way when some of you make up your own procedure. It's all right here in the AIM. I read mine every day. A little dusty there.
A lot of people get wrapped around the axle about this idea of 45-degree pattern entries, and that is the only way to enter a pattern and land the airplane, and I think that's frankly silly.
I know it's thick, but there's only one page you have to care about, and that's the pattern entry page. If we all use the standard procedure, we're all going to know where to look for each other when we're coming back to the airport.
You should just be aware of the situation and do what makes sense. The 45-degree downwind entry is never wrong, but if there's nobody else in the pattern, it's not really necessary either. There's nothing wrong with the midfield crosswind entry if there aren't already 4 airplanes on downwind.
One day, not too long ago, I sat in a lawn chair and for part of an afternoon, and I counted, had a stopwatch, and made some notes on these pattern entries. And you know, the people that flew overhead, went outbound, did the 45-degree pattern entry. I'm sure they're being as conscientious, and they're doing things that the way they're being taught, the way they interpret the FAA rules. On average, the people who flew overhead the airport, did the 45-degree pattern entry, spent about 9 minutes within almost 10 minutes. I think it was 9 minutes and 40 seconds was the average for a 172 doing an overhead crossing, a 3-mile outbound leg, and then a 45-degree pattern entry. Each plane that did it this way would spend about 9, almost 10 minutes in the airport traffic area where most mid-air collisions occur.
If you're coming in from the downwind side of the airport, you want to be at pattern altitude on the 45. You don't want to reach downwind and have to climb or descend, because you may climb into somebody or descend into somebody. Who will you descend into at this airport? Helicopters. If you're coming from the other side of the airport, I stay 2,000 feet above the center of the runway, and I'm crossing over turbine traffic, which is 1,500 feet AGL. I'm crossing over regular traffic and, of course, the helicopter traffic.
Absolute necessity is that you make all turns to the left unless the runway has published right traffic, in which case you make all turns to the right. And particularly if you're arriving IFR, you really need to know which direction the traffic pattern runs. One night, making a visual approach into a non-towered field, I found myself nose to nose with a Pilatus PC-12 that was flying left traffic to a published right runway. The guy went ahead, did a go around, and I found myself facing him a second time, looking straight into his landing lights. It was not comfortable.
If you make up your own procedure, you're the only one that's going to know where to look for other traffic. I'll be surprised. Don't have a surprise at the airport. Just use the AIM.
Well, there's one debate I don't think we're going to solve anytime soon. We leave you this week with a trip around the pylons of the Reno Racecourse. We'll fly along with race pilot Vicki Benzing in her sport class Glass Air called Cruise Missile. Thanks for watching. I'm Tom Haynes. We'll see you next Thursday for AOPA Live This Week.
Every Thursday,
we're working to get you answers.
The most experienced reporters in general aviation
bring you more details as they develop.
The stories that affect you.
We talk with our own safety expert.
Every Thursday, AOPA Live This Week.